Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
Adam West, the icon who turned a batsuit into a legacy. Adam West wasn't just an actor, he was a vibe. For an entire generation, he embodied a version of Batman that today feels almost surreal. Colorful, wholesome, earnest to the point of comedy, and dripping with that 1960s pop art charm. Yet beneath the bright costumes, tilted camera angles, and over-the-top, pow! graphics, West carved out a cultural imprint that still resonates. Born William West Anderson in Walla Walla, Washington, he didn't glide into Hollywood on any sort of pre-built fame. He worked his way through TV gigs, commercials, and supporting roles before fate handed him the cape. And once he put it on, he redefined the world's most brooding superhero in a way no one else ever dared. The 1966 to 1968 Batman series wasn't meant to be dark. It was lighthearted, self-aware, and playfully absurd. And West played his role with perfect seriousness, which is exactly why it was funny. His Batman was calm under pressure, polite to villains, and capable of giving long lectures on morality while dangling over shark-infested waters. It was comedy born from sincerity, and West nailed it. But the end of the series brought a long shadow. West faced the frustrating typecasting that hits actors who become too iconic too early. Still, he handled it with humor and humility. He kept working, appearing in TV shows, films, and eventually embracing his pop culture status with voice work that let his dry wit shine. His role as Mayor Adam West on Family Guy introduced him to a whole new audience and proved he could poke fun at his own legend better than anyone else. By the time he passed away in 2017, Adam West had become a fully cemented cultural figure, the man who helped launch Batman into mainstream household fame, the performer who revived interest in camp, and the actor who managed to turn a once limiting legacy into a celebration. Today, fans don't just remember his Batman. They remember the charm, the warmth, the deadpan delivery, and the way he embraced his own history. Adam West didn't just wear the cape, he turned it into something uniquely his. Adam West's career is one of those Hollywood stories that doesn't move in a straight line. After Batman, he had decades where the industry didn't quite know what to do with him. Some actors grow bitter when fame hits fast, then fades even faster, but West handled the whole ride with a kind of wry, self-aware grace. He knew he'd become a symbol, and instead of fighting it, he learned how to be in on the joke. Off camera, he was thoughtful, surprisingly soft-spoken, and way funnier than the public ever realized. He had this dry, almost whispered humor that could turn a simple comment into a punchline. Fans who met him at conventions often walked away saying the same thing: he was incredibly kind. He took time with people. He listened, and he genuinely seemed entertained by how deeply folks still loved his 1960s Batman. And that show, by the way, aged into a different kind of treasure. Critics who once dismissed it as silly came around to see it as a clever parody of superhero tropes long before superhero media became everywhere. West's straight-faced style is now considered pitch perfect. He never winked at the camera, never mocked the role, and that commitment is exactly what made the absurdity work. As the decades rolled on, his career got a second wind. Voice acting let him flex parts of his personality that live-action roles rarely tapped. Family Guy made him meme-level iconic. DC animated projects brought him back into the Batman universe with affectionate nostalgia. In 2016, for the character's 50th anniversary, he returned in the animated film Return of the Caped Crusaders, proving he still had that unmistakable cadence that fans loved. In his later years, West settled into the legacy of someone who didn't just portray a hero, but became one in pop culture. He represented a time when superheroes were fun, bright, and unashamedly optimistic. He embodied a Batman who fought crime with civility, quirkiness, and an endless supply of bat gadgets that always seemed to solve oddly specific problems. When he died, Los Angeles literally lit up the night sky with the bat signal in his honor. That wasn't just nostalgia, it was respect. It was recognition of a performer whose work touched millions and stuck around for half a century. Adam West left behind a legacy that is both charming and enduring. A reminder that heroes don't always have to be dark to be unforgettable. Adam West, the enduring legacy of television's brightest dark knight. Adam West spent more than half a century in Hollywood. But his place in popular culture was sealed the moment he pulled on a blue cowl and stepped into the Batmobile. For millions of viewers, he wasn't just Batman. He was the Batman, colorful, charismatic, and wonderfully deadpan. While later iterations of the character embraced shadows and grit, West's version offered something just as powerful: charm, humor, and a sincere belief in doing the right thing. Early life and career beginnings. Born William West Anderson on September 19, 1928, in Walla Walla, Washington. West grew up with a love of comic strips and a flair for performing. After serving in the U.S. Army and earning a degree in literature and psychology, he drifted toward the entertainment world. Throughout the 1950s and early 1960s, West appeared in commercials, TV series, and adventure films, slowly carving a niche as a handsome, versatile leading man with a knack for tongue-in-cheek delivery. Becoming Batman in 1966, ABC launched Batman, a bright, camp-heavy live-action adaptation of the DC Comics hero. West's performance struck a perfect balance between seriousness and absurdity. He delivered even the most over-the-top lines with unwavering conviction, turning everyday dialogue into comedic gold. His Batman was moral, unflappable, and, above all, fun. Paired with Burt Ward's energetic Robin, the duo became one of television's most iconic crime-fighting partnerships. Though the show only ran for 3 seasons, it exploded into a pop culture phenomenon. Kids adored it, adults appreciated the sly satire, and West became a household name practically overnight. Life after the Cape. When Batman ended in 1968, West faced the kind of typecasting that often follows actors who become too closely associated with a single role. Yet instead of distancing himself from the character, he leaned into the legacy with humor and humility. Over time, he built a second wave of fame through appearances at conventions, voice acting, and self-aware performances that celebrated his own mythology. His role as the eccentric Mayor Adam West on Family Guy introduced him to new generations who might never have seen the original series, showcasing his impeccable comedic timing and willingness to poke fun at himself. A legacy of joy. Adam West passed away in 2017 at age 88, but his influence is anything but gone. His Batman remains a cultural touchstone, the version that taught fans that heroism doesn't always need to be brooding to be meaningful. He proved that camp can be clever, sincerity can be powerful, and humor can be heroic. Decades of Dark Knights have followed, each memorable in their own way. Yet Adam West's portrayal stands alone as a warm, playful, and timeless interpretation that continues to charm audiences around the world. He wasn't the darkest Batman. He wasn't the angriest. He was simply unforgettable. Adam West. Beyond the Cape. Adam West's story is more than a single role, even if that role came with pointy ears and a utility belt. His journey from small-town kid to international icon is full of unexpected turns, steady perseverance, and a quietly rebellious spirit. Crafting the Batman persona. Part of what made West's Batman so distinctive was how seriously he took the absurdity. The producers of Batman wanted a lighthearted tone, but West insisted the comedy had to come from the situations, not from Batman winking at the audience. He played the character like a square-jawed knight constantly encountering chaos. And that contrast gave the show its charm. His earnest delivery of lines like, "Quick, Robin, to the Batcave," or, "A fine example you've set for your students," became the secret ingredient that turned camp into art. The pressure and glory of pop stardom. By the time Batman hit its peak, West couldn't go anywhere without being swarmed by fans. Kids tugged at his cape. Adults stopped him on the street. Reporters followed him everywhere. The show's runaway success was thrilling but also confining. For West, the mask was a blessing and a barrier. It made him famous, but it froze casting directors' imaginations. He once joked that after the series ended, producers would tell him, "We'd love to cast you, but we can't have Batman falling in love, dying, or committing a crime." In Hollywood logic, he wasn't Adam West. He was Batman trying to be Adam West. Reinvention through voice and comedy. By the 1980s and 1990s, West had embraced a new lane: voice acting and self-aware comedy. That choice turned out to be gold. Cartoons like The New Adventures of Batman, The Superpowers Team, and later Family Guy kept him in the spotlight. He also lent his voice to video games, animated films, and superhero specials, usually as himself or a parody of his on-screen persona. The brilliance of this period was his ability to laugh with the audience instead of resisting his legacy. He didn't treat Batman as a weight dragging him down. He treated it like a quirky old friend he was happy to revisit. The Batmania resurgence. By the 2000s, fans had begun re-evaluating West's Batman. What had once been dismissed as too goofy was now viewed as a vital chapter in superhero history. His version was the gateway for an entire generation of comic lovers. It kept Batman alive during a time when the character's future wasn't guaranteed. Without West's cultural impact in the 1960s, later darker reinterpretations might not have found the same momentum. Collectors hunted for vintage memorabilia. Conventions treated him like royalty. And when the animated films Batman, Return of the Caped Crusaders, 2016, and Batman vs. Two-Face, 2017, came out, fans were thrilled to hear West don the cowl one more time. A gentle presence off-screen. People who worked with West often described him with words like gracious, warm, and quietly hilarious. He loved meeting fans, signing autographs, and telling stories from the set. His sense of humor was slow and dry, the kind that sneaks up on you. He also remained deeply appreciative of the role that defined him. In interviews, he often said that Batman gave him a place in the hearts of people, and that this was something no actor could ever take for granted. Why his Batman still matters. Adam West's Batman stands as a reminder that superheroes don't have to be grim to be compelling. His world was colorful. His villains were theatrical. His sense of justice was clear. That simplicity, far from making the show childish, gave it a kind of purity that still feels refreshing. As superhero stories continue to evolve, West's legacy holds steady. His Batman is the one that laughs, teaches good morals, and never wavers in optimism. He's the version that makes you smile before he throws a punch. A legacy that won't fade even years after his passing. Adam West remains beloved. Murals, tributes, documentaries, and fan celebrations continue to honor him. His star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame sits not just as a marker of his career but as a symbol of how deeply he connected with audiences. In the ever-growing universe of Batman, Adam West occupies a special orbit. Not the darkest, not the flashiest, but undeniably one of the most important. Inside the making of the 1966 Batman phenomenon, the original Batman series wasn't supposed to be a camp classic. Early talks leaned toward a serious adventure show. But the producers realized the comic book tone of the 1960s audience demanded something wilder. Adam West became the anchor that made the chaos coherent. The suits were intentionally exaggerated. The villains were larger than life. Every fight scene came with sky-high, pow, and bam graphics. West, though, kept the character grounded. He played Batman with stoic precision, almost like a comedic straight man in his own show. That balance turned him into an icon. Behind the scenes, West was known for being meticulous. He insisted Batman should never brag, never use guns, always speak respectfully, and always teach moral lessons. To him, Batman was a role model first, a superhero second. That old-fashioned approach became one reason so many kids in the 60s adored him. West and his rogues gallery. One of the most delightful parts of the show was West's chemistry with the villains. Cesar Romero's Joker, Burgess Meredith's Penguin, and Frank Gorshin's Riddler gave performances so bold they bordered on surreal, and West met them beat for beat with straight-faced sincerity. Romero famously refused to shave his mustache for the role, so makeup artists painted white grease paint over it. West never complained or broke character. Even when facing a villain with a mustache hiding under layers of clown makeup. His professionalism is part of why the show felt cohesive despite its wild tone. The Batman movie and peak stardom. At the height of the show's popularity, West starred in Batman, the movie, 1966. The film took the series' style to an even more absurd level. Batman ran around a dock trying to get rid of a bomb. He battled a dehydrator weapon. He tangled with a united front of all the major villains. That movie is still studied today as an early example of meta superhero storytelling, the kind that understood the joke but never mocked the audience. For West, this period was surreal. He was in parades, in commercials, at charity events, on talk shows. At one point, he had to hire security because kids kept grabbing for his cowl. The challenge of reinvention. When the series ended in 1968, superhero culture entered a quiet phase. Studios weren't sure comic book TV shows had long-term value. And West suddenly found himself typecast. He said it was like walking around with a permanent cape on your back. He did find work, but the roles often referenced Batman, guest appearances, comedy bits, or small roles in action films. Instead of fighting it, West accepted that he had become a symbol. He realized audiences didn't want him to escape Batman. They wanted him to own Batman. Finding a new voice and a new audience. By the 1990s, Adam West was experiencing a renaissance. Animation studios loved his warm, confident tone. Directors loved his willingness to parody himself. And fans at conventions treated him like Hollywood nobility. Shows like The Simpsons, Batman, the animated series, special roles, Family Guy helped reintroduce him to a younger crowd. His work on Family Guy became legend because it wasn't just voice acting. Adam West played a fictionalized version of himself that was delightfully unhinged yet weirdly lovable. He transformed from the guy who used to be Batman into the guy who turned being Batman into a lifelong joke he was in on. A kind soul. In real life, people who met Adam West almost always describe the same thing. A gentle, considerate man with a dry sense of humor. He signed autographs for hours. He remembered fans by name. He treated children with real warmth. He also deeply respected the Batman legacy. He understood that for many fans, he was tied to childhood memories, comfort, and joy. One of the more touching stories came after the 2017 Manchester Arena bombing. The city projected the bat signal on a high-rise to honor victims. Adam West shared the image online and wrote a message of solidarity. Only a month later, he passed away, and Los Angeles projected the bat signal in his memory. Fans around the world cried over that tribute. His final works and farewell. Adam West's final major project was the animated film Batman vs. Two-Face, released after his passing. His performance in it felt like a full-circle gift to fans. Charming, heroic, and full of old-school warmth. Today, his influence touches everything from comedy to superhero cinema. Every actor who wears the cowl now steps into a legacy he helped build. The enduring magic of Adam West's cultural power comes from the simplest thing: he made Batman kind. Not tortured, not haunted, not furious, just kind. He showed that superheroes could be joyful without being shallow, and funny without losing their integrity. That sunny optimism is part of why his Batman still resonates. Especially in a world that loves darker storytelling but sometimes craves light. Adam West didn't just play Batman. He became a symbol of a more hopeful era in entertainment. And symbols like that don't fade. The Adam West blueprint. How he redefined the TV hero. Before Adam West, television heroes were usually cut from one of two cloths: the stoic Western gunslinger or the hard-boiled detective. These characters were rugged, terse, and morally infallible. West brought something different to the table. His Batman had gentleness, politeness, a quirky intellectual curiosity, and a sense of earnest duty that felt both old-fashioned and refreshing. He wasn't a brooding vigilante lurking in shadows. He was a civic-minded leader who believed in seatbelt safety, milk, and good grammar. And yet he never felt dull or weak. Kids saw him as powerful. Adults saw him as clever satire. Achieving that double effect is harder than it looks, and West pulled it off with remarkable skill. Inside West's personal life and philosophy behind the mask, Adam West was thoughtful, funny, and surprisingly introspective. He was married 3 times and had 6 children, and people close to him often described him as a devoted father who mixed humor with sincerity in equal measure. He was a man who genuinely appreciated the oddity of his fame. When asked what it was like to be recognized as Batman everywhere he went, he once said, "It's not a bad thing to be identified with something people love." He embraced the idea that pop culture can give people comfort, nostalgia, and connection. In a world filled with cynicism, West's worldview was a gentle refusal to let go of sincerity. A look at his early projects before Batman. West worked steadily in Hollywood. You'll find him in Maverick, Sugarfoot, Laramie, The Detectives, Robinson Crusoe on Mars, 1964, where he played Colonel Dan McCready, a notable series of commercials for Nestlé's Quick, where he played a suave, James Bond-like character. These roles showcased his versatility, especially his gift for deadpan delivery. Hollywood didn't quite know what to do with that tone at the time, but when Batman arrived, it clicked into place like destiny. The Batman costume, a cultural artifact. The original Batman suit is now one of the most recognizable pieces of superhero history. A few fun details. The fabric was intentionally slightly loose to emphasize movement and comedy. West's utility belt often contained props for obscure, oddly specific situations. The cowl was molded to enhance his jawline, which was considered ideal for comic book accuracy. West's Batman famously had visible eyebrows painted on the mask. A bold design choice rarely repeated since. Today, replicas of his suit are museum-ready collectibles, often displayed to highlight the evolution of superhero costuming. The stuntwork and physicality. People tend to forget Adam West did a surprising amount of his own physical acting. The show's tight TV schedule meant West and Burt Ward often shot fight scenes quickly and without heavy stunt doubling. Ward was injured more often, but West had his share of scrapes. Despite the chaotic staging, West always pushed to make Batman look calm and in control, no matter how absurd the situation. That physical comedy, done with total seriousness, elevated scenes from goofy to iconic. Typecasting. A long road to appreciation. After the series ended, West had offers, but many were Batman adjacent. He turned down roles he felt mocked the character or abused the legacy, because he wanted to maintain a certain dignity for Batman fans. The typecasting era lasted roughly 2 decades. West didn't become bitter, he became patient. He accepted small roles, did voiceover work, made guest appearances, and let the cultural tides shift. And shift they did. By the late 80s, comic culture exploded. Older fans became filmmakers, writers, and tastemakers, and they had grown up on Adam West. Suddenly, West wasn't the guy who couldn't escape Batman. He was the guy who made Batman a legend. A cultural reappraisal by the time the darker Batman films began dominating theaters. People realized something. Adam West's version didn't compete. It complemented. It was a different flavor entirely. Critics began.
Bye bye. Thanks for watching. Bye.